She vanished into the forest at 16. But what the sheriff found a year later wasn't a body. It was something no one could explain. The day she disappeared, the town thought they knew the ending. Another lost girl. Another cold trail swallowed by the woods. But a year later, when the sheriff followed a faint sign deep into the trees, he didn't find silence. He found life. Hidden, untouched, and built with a purpose no one could understand. And the deeper he looked, the more he realized she hadn't been lost at all. Before we go further, tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. The smoke was too thin to belong to carelessness. Caleb Foster saw it just after sunrise, when the light was still soft and the mountains held that quiet, breathless stillness before the day fully woke. But he had been riding the ridge trail above Bitterroot Valley, checking for late-season fire hazards the way he always did in September. It was routine work, predictable, quiet, something he had grown to trust. Then he saw it. A faint ribbon of blue-gray drifting upward along the face of a distant slope. Not rising fast, not thick, just steady. Caleb pulled his horse to a stop. For a long moment he didn't move. He just watched. The wind was light, barely enough to stir the tops of the pines. That kind of smoke should have flattened out, spread, disappeared. But this one didn't. It rose clean and narrow, hugging the cliffside before fading into the morning sky like it belonged there. "That's not a wildfire," Caleb muttered under his breath. Wildfires were messy, angry. They announced themselves. This was controlled. When he shifted in the saddle and leaned forward slightly, narrowing his eyes. Someone was up there. And that didn't make sense. The area beyond that ridge wasn't just remote. It was restricted. Old mining land, unstable ground. Sections marked unsafe years ago and never reopened. No cabins, no permits, no legal reason for anyone to be living out there. Which meant one thing: illegal grow operation. Caleb had seen enough of them over the years to recognize the signs. People hiding deep in the mountains, growing crops they didn't want found, setting up camps that blended into the land. Quiet fires, careful smoke. No trails. He exhaled slowly and adjusted the brim of his hat. "All right," he said, more to himself than anything else. "Let's go see what you're hiding." He nudged the horse forward, guiding it down off the ridge and into the thicker timber below. The forest swallowed sound as soon as he entered it. Pine needles softened the ground. The air cooled, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and old bark. Somewhere in the distance, a creek moved over stone, low and steady, like a whisper you could almost understand if you listened long enough. Caleb dismounted at the edge of a narrow clearing and tied the reins to a low branch. From here on, he would go on foot. He checked the sidearm at his hip, not drawing it, just making sure it was there, and started uphill. The climb wasn't steep, but it was uneven. Moss-covered rocks shifted under his boots, and the undergrowth thickened the higher he went. Laurel and young pine closed in around him, forcing him to slow down, to place each step carefully. And he kept his eyes on the slope ahead, and the smoke. It was still there, still thin, still controlled. The closer he got, the stranger it felt, because now he could smell it. Not chemicals, not the sour, heavy scent of something cooked in secrecy. Wood. Clean-burning wood. Seasoned. That didn't fit the picture. Caleb stopped again, crouching slightly as he studied the ground. No obvious trail, no crushed brush, no trash, nothing. If someone was living up here, they were doing it right. He moved again, slower now, more deliberate. The forest thinned as the slope curved around a natural bend in the mountain. Ahead, the trees opened just enough to reveal a stretch of exposed rock, a cliff face, weathered and pale, cutting across the hillside like a scar. And that's when he saw it. Not the smoke, the structure. At first, it didn't register. His brain tried to place it as part of the landscape, just another formation of stone, another trick of shadow and light. Then the lines resolved. Straight lines, human lines. A low wall built from flat slabs of rock, stacked with care. Not perfect, but intentional. The kind of work that didn't happen by accident. Caleb's breath caught slightly as he took a step closer. Behind the wall, tucked beneath the overhang of the cliff, something moved. Not fast, not startled. Calm, deliberate. He felt something shift in his chest. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. Something that told him this wasn't what he had come here expecting to find. He moved to the edge of the clearing and stopped. From here, he could see it clearly. A shelter, not a makeshift camp, not a temporary setup, a home. The rock overhang formed a natural roof, deep enough to keep out rain. The front was partially enclosed with stone and woven branches, creating a barrier against wind and view. A small opening served as a doorway, covered in something that looked like layered foliage. To one side there was a patch of cleared ground, dark soil turned and tended. A garden. Even from a distance, Caleb could see the remnants of growth. Corn stalks cut low, vines creeping along the edge, signs of harvest, not neglect. And the smoke. It came from a fire set back against the rock, where it could rise along the cliff face and disperse without drawing attention. It was smart. Too smart. Caleb stood there, silent, trying to make sense of it. This wasn't a grow operation. This wasn't someone hiding for profit. This was someone living. Well, the thought settled into him slowly, like cold water seeping through cloth. Someone had built this. Up here. Alone. He took another step forward, and that's when he saw the dog. It appeared without warning, stepping into view from the shadow near the shelter. Large, lean. A German shepherd, its coat a mix of dark sable and faded tan, muscles tight beneath its skin. It didn't bark. It didn't charge. It just stood there, head slightly lowered, eyes locked on him. Watching. Caleb froze. The dog didn't move closer. It didn't retreat either. It held its ground. And in that stillness, there was something unmistakable. Not fear, not confusion. Recognition. This was a trained animal, not wild, not lost, disciplined. The kind of discipline that came from years of working alongside someone. Caleb's heartbeat slowed, but the weight in his chest grew heavier. He had seen dogs like that before. Military dogs. Search and rescue. Animals that didn't just follow commands. They understood them, which meant one thing. The person who lived here wasn't ordinary. A sound came from behind the dog. Soft, measured. Footsteps. Caleb's eyes shifted, and then he saw him. A man stepped out from the shadow of the shelter. Older. 60s, maybe. Weathered in a way that didn't come from age alone. His posture was straight, but not rigid. Controlled. Like every movement had been learned, practiced, refined. He didn't look surprised to see Caleb. He didn't look afraid. He just looked. And the dog shifted slightly, placing itself between the man and the stranger. Not aggressively, protectively. Caleb felt the air between them change. So this wasn't an encounter. It was a boundary. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the faint crackle of the fire and the distant rush of water far below. Caleb took in the details without meaning to. The man's hands, scarred, steady. The way he stood, balanced, aware of everything around him. The dog, never taking its eyes off Caleb, waiting. And then something else. Something Caleb couldn't explain. The place felt lived in. Not hidden, not temporary. Settled. Like whoever stood in front of him hadn't been surviving here. He had been staying. Caleb swallowed slowly, the weight of the moment settling deeper into him. He had come looking for a crime. He had expected to find something simple, something clear. Instead, he was standing at the edge of something he didn't understand. And somewhere, deep in the back of his mind, a thought began to form. A realization he wasn't ready to accept yet, because if he followed it to the end, it would force him to choose. And whatever choice he made next, it wouldn't be the right one. Not by the book, not by the law. Caleb took one more step forward, and the dog didn't move. The man didn't speak, but everything about them said the same thing. You're not supposed to be here. Caleb felt it settle into his bones, and for the first time since he'd seen that thin ribbon of smoke rising into the morning sky, he wasn't sure what he was going to do. Not yet. Not in the next minute. But soon. Very soon. Because decisions like this, they didn't wait. And whatever he chose in the next 10 minutes would follow him for the rest of his life. Oh, but the truth was, this wasn't where the story began. Not for Caleb, and definitely not for the man standing across from him. 1 year earlier, the air didn't smell like pine or cold stone back then. It smelled like dust, stale carpet, and something burnt that no one ever talked about. Nathan Brooks sat in the corner of a dim living room that no longer felt like his. The television was on, but the sound was low. Some late-night talk show. Laughter spilled out of it in bursts, sharp, out of place like it belonged to a different world. He didn't look at it. He never did anymore. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor, on a spot near the edge of the rug where the fibers had worn thin over the years. He'd stared at that same spot for hours without realizing it. Across the room, a woman stood with her arms folded tight against her chest. I can't do this anymore, Nate. Her voice wasn't loud. That would have been easier to handle. It was quiet. Final. Nathan didn't respond. Not because he didn't hear her, but because words had started to feel unnecessary. Or maybe impossible. I mean it, she said, her tone tightening just enough to show the strain underneath. This isn't living. You don't talk. You don't sleep. You just sit there. Or you wake up screaming like... She stopped herself, took a breath, shook her head. Nathan's jaw tightened slightly, but his eyes didn't move. From the hallway, a door creaked open. A young man, mid-30s, tired eyes, familiar face, leaned against the frame. Mom's right, he said, not looking directly at Nathan. We tried. For years we tried. Tried. The word echoed somewhere in Nathan's mind, but it didn't settle. Nothing settled anymore. You won't even get help, his son added. You won't talk to anyone. You won't take the meds. What are we supposed to do? Nathan blinked slowly. There were answers to that question. He knew there were. But every time he reached for them, they slipped away, like trying to grab hold of something underwater. Instead, something else surfaced. A sound. Distant, sharp, a crack. Then another. His breathing shifted just slightly. His hands curled against his knees. The living room flickered. Not literally, but in his mind, it fractured, split between what was and what had been. The walls dissolved into something darker, hotter. The air thickened. Voices turned into echoes, and suddenly, he wasn't in that room anymore, and he was somewhere else. Somewhere loud, somewhere dangerous, somewhere he couldn't leave. Nathan! The voice cut through it. Soft, low, grounded. A weight pressed gently against his leg. Warm. Real. He blinked again, harder this time. The room snapped back into place. The walls returned. The television. The worn rug. And beside him, Coda. The German shepherd sat close, his shoulder pressed firmly against Nathan's knee. His ears were alert, his eyes locked not on the others in the room, but on Nathan, watching, waiting, holding him there. Nathan exhaled slowly. The tension in his hands loosened, just a little. "He's the only thing you respond to," the woman said, her voice softer now, but not kinder. "That dog." Nathan's eyes flicked down to Coda. The dog didn't move, didn't break contact. He didn't need to. "He's not just a dog," Nathan said quietly. It was the first thing he had said all evening. Maybe the first thing he had said in days. The room went still. His son shifted uncomfortably. His wife, no, not his wife anymore, not really, sighed under her breath. "Whatever he is," she said, "he's not enough." Nathan didn't answer, because deep down he knew what she meant. And that was the problem. Nothing was enough anymore. Not the house, not the memories, not the life he had come back to. He had survived everything that was supposed to kill him. And somehow, this was the part he couldn't make it through. "We've already signed the papers," she said after a moment. "The house is going on the market next week." Nathan's head lifted slightly, not in shock, just acknowledgement. "You can stay here for a few days," she added. "But after that..." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Nathan looked around the room slowly. At the walls, at the furniture, at the life he had once built. And for the first time, it didn't feel like something he was losing. It felt like something that had already been gone for a long time. He nodded once. That was all. Across the room, his son let out a breath, almost relieved. "I'll help you pack," he said, like it was some kind of peace offering. Nathan didn't respond. Coda shifted slightly, pressing closer. The only thing in that room that still felt certain. That night, Nathan didn't sleep. He sat in the dark long after the house had gone quiet. The television was off. The lights were off. The only sound was the steady rhythm of Coda's breathing beside him. Every so often, Nathan's eyes would close. And every time they did, the world came back. Not this one, the other one. The one that never really left. He would jolt awake, heart racing, hands clenched, breath caught somewhere between a gasp and a shout. And every time, Coda was there. A weight against him. A presence that didn't question, didn't judge, didn't leave. At some point, just before dawn, Nathan stood. He moved slowly, quietly, not because he was trying to hide, but because everything he did now felt measured, controlled. Like if he moved too fast, something might break. He walked to the door, paused, then opened it. Cold air rushed in, sharp, clean, real. Coda was already on his feet, ready, always ready. Nathan stepped outside. The sky was just beginning to lighten, the horizon painted in pale gray and soft blue. For a long moment, he just stood there, breathing, listening. No voices, no echoes, just the wind, and the distant sound of nothing. He glanced down at Coda. The dog looked up at him, steady as ever, not asking, not waiting for instructions, just there. Nathan nodded slightly. A decision forming, not all at once, not in words, but in something deeper, something simpler. He didn't belong here anymore. Maybe he never had. And if the world he came back to had no place for him, then maybe he needed to find a place that didn't ask anything from him at all. No noise, no expectations, no memories that refused to stay buried. Just quiet. Nathan turned his gaze toward the distant line of mountains, barely visible in the early light. The Rockies. Wild, empty, unforgiving, but honest. For the first time in a long while, that something inside him felt clear, not fixed, not healed, but pointed, like a direction. He looked down at Coda again. "You coming?" he asked softly. The dog didn't hesitate. Nathan gave a small nod. Then he stepped forward. Not back into the house, but away from it. And this time, he didn't look back. The road out of town was quiet at that hour. No traffic, no voices. Just the low hum of tires against asphalt and the soft rattle of an old truck that had seen better years. Nathan kept both hands on the wheel, steady but tight. Beside him, Coda sat upright in the passenger seat, eyes forward, alert without tension. The dog didn't need to be told anything. He understood movement, direction, change. He always had. The town disappeared in the rearview mirror long before the sun rose. Gas stations, streetlights, tiny houses stacked too close together. All of it faded into a gray blur behind them, swallowed by distance and early morning fog. Nathan didn't check the mirror. Not once. He drove until the pavement turned to gravel, then dirt, then something that barely qualified as a road at all. By midday, they were deep into the foothills. The mountains loomed ahead, rising in layers of blue and shadow, endless and indifferent. Nathan pulled the truck over near a narrow clearing. He turned off the engine. Silence rushed in. Not the empty kind. The real kind. Wind moving through pine. Insects humming in the grass. The distant cry of something wild, echoing across the valley. Nathan sat there for a long moment, hands still on the wheel. Breathing. Coda shifted beside him, then hopped down from the seat as Nathan opened the door. The ground was uneven under his boots, soft with needles and damp earth. The air felt different here. Colder, cleaner, sharper. Real. Nathan walked a few steps away from the truck and stopped. For the first time in a long while, there was nothing behind him. No expectations, no voices, no walls. Just space. Coda circled once, then came to stand beside him, shoulder brushing lightly against Nathan's leg. Nathan glanced down. The dog looked up, calm and steady, always steady. Nathan gave a faint nod, almost to himself. "This'll do," he said quietly. But the truth was, he didn't know what he was doing. Not really. The first night came fast. The mountains didn't ease you into darkness. They dropped it on you. One moment there was light, thin and fading through the trees. The next, black. Cold settled in quickly, biting through fabric and skin alike. Nathan built a small fire near the truck, using deadwood he gathered from the forest floor. The flames came slowly, carefully. He didn't rush them, didn't waste movement. Every action was deliberate, controlled, the way it had always been when mistakes weren't allowed. Coda lay close to the fire, watching the edges of the clearing. Listening. Nathan sat across from him, hands resting on his knees, eyes fixed on the flames. For a while. It worked. The fire crackled. The wind moved gently through the trees. The night stayed quiet. Then it came. A sound, sharp, distant, but close enough. Nathan's head snapped up. His breath caught. Another sound followed. A pop. Then, everything changed. The fire in front of him wasn't a fire anymore. It was something else. Too bright. Oh, too fast. The trees around him shifted, twisted into shapes he recognized too well. Voices, shouting, overlapping, filled the air, though none of them belonged to this place. Nathan's body reacted before his mind could catch up. He dropped low, one hand hitting the ground, the other reaching instinctively for something that wasn't there. His breathing turned shallow, fast, controlled, but barely. "Coda," he started, but the word broke apart in his throat. The world pressed in, too loud, too close, too much. Then, wait. Solid. Grounded. Coda moved without hesitation, stepping into Nathan's space, pressing his body firmly against him. Not aggressive, not panicked, just there. Nathan's hand caught in the dog's fur, gripping hard without meaning to. The sensation was immediate, real. The fire flickered, while the trees shifted back. The voices faded. Nathan blinked, once, twice. The clearing returned. The fire. The cold. The night. He sucked in a breath, deep and shaky. Coda didn't move, didn't pull away. He stayed exactly where he was, letting Nathan anchor himself. Seconds passed, then minutes. Nathan's grip loosened. His breathing slowed. The world settled back into something he could understand. He looked down at Coda. The dog's eyes met his, calm as ever. No fear, no confusion, just presence. Nathan swallowed hard. "Yeah," he whispered. "I know." He didn't explain. He didn't need to. Coda already understood more than anyone else ever had. That night didn't end. It stretched. Every time Nathan closed his eyes, something pulled him back under. Different scenes, different sounds, but always the same feeling. Pressure, noise, loss of control. And every time, Coda brought him back. A shift of weight, a nudge, a low, steady breath against his arm. Until morning finally broke through the trees. Gray light filtered in slowly, pushing the darkness back piece by piece. Nathan sat there, eyes open, unmoving. He hadn't slept, not even for a minute. Coda rose and stretched, then stepped a few feet away, scanning the edge of the clearing before returning to Nathan's side. Routine. Awareness. Discipline. Nathan watched him for a moment, then nodded once. "We're not staying here," he said. Not because of the night, but because of what the night had shown him. This place, this open clearing, this exposed ground. It wasn't safe. Not from others. Not from himself. He stood slowly, joints stiff, body heavy from exhaustion. Coda moved with him instantly. Nathan turned, looking deeper into the trees, upward, toward the mountains, toward something harder, something quieter, something that might finally be far enough away. He took a step forward, then another, leaving the truck behind, leaving the last piece of the world he knew sitting in that clearing, empty and silent. Coda followed without hesitation, and as they moved deeper into the forest, the air grew colder, the light thinner, the world narrower. But somehow, for Nathan, it felt closer to the only place he had left to go. The trees closed in the farther they walked, not in a threatening way, in a quiet way. Like the world was slowly folding around them, sealing off everything behind them one step at a time. Branches hung lower, The ground grew uneven, layered with roots and stone. The light that filtered through the canopy turned thin and gray, breaking into narrow beams that barely reached the forest floor. Nathan didn't rush. He moved with purpose but without urgency, each step placed carefully, each breath measured. Coda stayed just ahead of him now, no longer at his side, scanning, listening. Every few moments the dog would pause, head lifting slightly, ears adjusting to something Nathan couldn't hear. Then he would continue, choosing the path forward without hesitation. Nathan trusted that instinct. He always had. By mid-afternoon, the slope began to rise, not sharply at first, just enough to remind them that the mountains weren't something you entered. They were something you earned. Nathan's legs burned, but he didn't slow down. Pain was familiar, predictable, and easier than everything else. They crossed a narrow stream, water cutting cold and fast over smooth stone. Nathan crouched briefly, filling an old metal canteen, watching the current move without resistance. No hesitation, no memory, just flow. He stood again and looked uphill. That's where they needed to go. Higher meant colder, harder, but also quieter. Less chance of being found, less chance of being remembered. They kept moving. As the sun dipped lower, the forest began to change. The trees thinned slightly, giving way to larger patches of exposed rock. The ground hardened underfoot, and the air carried a sharper edge. The wind picked up, not strong, but constant. Nathan noticed it immediately. Wind meant sound. Sound meant cover. It also meant fewer animals, fewer people. He stopped. Coda turned back toward him instantly. Nathan scanned the area slowly. Ahead, the mountain curved inward, forming a natural bend. The rock face there rose steep and pale, worn smooth in places, jagged in others. At its base, shadows pooled thick and deep where the sunlight couldn't reach. Nathan stepped closer. There. A natural overhang. Not large, but enough. The rock extended outward just far enough to create shelter from above. The ground beneath it was dry, protected from rain, from snow. The space wasn't visible from a distance unless you were looking directly at it, which meant it could work. Nathan walked the perimeter slowly, eyes moving across every detail. Sightlines, approach angles, escape routes, instinct, training, everything he had learned, everything that had once kept him alive. It all came back, not as memory, as function. Coda moved ahead, sniffing along the edge of the clearing, then circling back to Nathan. He didn't signal danger. He didn't hesitate. Nathan nodded once. "Yeah," he said quietly. "This is it." The decision didn't feel big. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt final. He wasn't passing through. He wasn't waiting. He was staying. The first thing he did was clear the ground. Slow, methodical work. Branches, loose stone, anything that could make noise underfoot. Coda stayed nearby, watching the tree line, occasionally moving out and back again in widening circles, always returning, always checking. Nathan worked until the light began to fade. Then he gathered wood. Not from the immediate area. Never from the immediate area. He moved outward, collecting deadfall from different directions, and spreading the disturbance so it wouldn't form a pattern. By the time the fire was built, the sky had already darkened. This time he placed it carefully, back against the rock, low, controlled. The flames rose just enough to give heat, not enough to throw light beyond the shelter. The smoke, it slid upward along the cliff face, breaking apart before it could rise too high. Nathan watched it for a long moment, then gave a small nod. Good. He sat down, back against the stone, legs stretched out in front of him. Coda settled nearby, positioned just outside the immediate glow of the fire, where shadow met light. A better vantage point, always watching. The wind carried through the trees, steady and low. No sudden sounds, no sharp cracks, just quiet. Nathan closed his eyes. Not fully, not completely, but enough. Minutes passed, then longer. His breathing slowed. For the first time in days, there was no immediate pull, no sudden shift, no explosion waiting behind his eyelids, just darkness. Still. Coda didn't move, didn't need to. He could feel it. The difference. The way Nathan's body had loosened, just slightly. The way his breathing had settled into something closer to normal. The night stretched on. Cold crept in again, but the fire held. The shelter held. Everything held. At some point, Nathan drifted. Not into sleep. Not completely. But close enough that the edges of the world softened. And when something stirred, a distant sound, faint and unclear, Coda reacted first. His head lifted, ears forward, body still. He didn't bark, didn't growl, just watched, listened, waited. The sound passed. Nothing followed. Coda remained alert for a few more seconds, then slowly lowered himself back down. The forest returned to silence. Nathan didn't wake. Not this time. And when dawn finally came, pale light creeping over the ridge and spilling down the rock face, he opened his eyes slowly. No jolt, no gasp, no confusion, just awareness. He sat up, blinking against the light. For a moment he didn't move, didn't reach for anything, didn't brace for something that wasn't there. Coda stood and stretched, then stepped closer, brushing lightly against Nathan's side. Nathan looked at him, really looked, and something in his expression shifted. Not relief, not happiness. Something quieter, something deeper. "You did good," he said. Coda's tail moved once, small, controlled. Nathan stood, turning his gaze outward, toward the forest below. The world stretched out in layers of green and gray, untouched, endless. No roads, no houses, no people, just land. And for the first time since he had come back, it didn't feel like he was running. It felt like he had arrived. Nathan exhaled slowly, then turned back toward the shelter. Work to do, more to build, more to secure. But this time, he wasn't doing it to survive something. He was doing it to stay. And that changed everything. The mountain didn't care. It didn't notice the man beneath the rock, or the dog that moved like a shadow at the edge of the trees. It didn't adjust itself to make things easier. It didn't offer comfort. It simply remained. Cold, silent, unforgiving. And that was exactly why Nathan trusted it. Days turned into something harder to measure. Not by clocks, not by calendars, by light and dark, by hunger and rest, by progress. Nathan worked every morning before the sun cleared the ridge. The air was sharp then, biting at his lungs, forcing each breath to be taken slowly. He would step out from beneath the overhang, scan the valley below, then begin. First, the wall. He gathered flat stones from the slope, carrying them one by one, stacking them carefully along the front edge of the shelter. Not high enough to block the view entirely, he needed to see, but thick enough to break the wind. Each stone had a place. Each gap had a purpose. There was no rushing it. Coda stayed close during this work, moving in a slow perimeter, circling wider when Nathan focused, then returning without being called. Always aware, always watching. By the third day, the shape of the shelter began to change. It no longer looked like a hollow in the rock. It looked intentional. Nathan added branches next, interlocking them between the stones, weaving them in a pattern that broke straight lines. From a distance, it wouldn't read as structure. It would read as forest. He covered sections with layers of pine and brush, blending the edges, softening the outline. Then he stepped back, looked at it, adjusted, stepped back again. Coda stood beside him, head tilted slightly, as if measuring it too. Nathan nodded once. Better. He didn't smile, but something close to satisfaction settled in his chest. At night, he refined the fire. Smaller, hotter. He dug a shallow pit against the rock face, lining it with stone to contain the heat. The flames sat lower now, controlled, and their light barely reaching beyond the shelter. The smoke followed the same path as before, sliding up the rock, thinning into nothing before it could be seen from below. Nathan watched it every time, studied it, adjusted the angle, the airflow, the wood, until it became predictable, reliable, safe. That word lingered longer than it should have. Safe. He didn't trust it fully. Not yet. But he understood it. And that was enough. Food came next. He moved carefully through the forest, learning its patterns, where the animals moved, where the water pooled, where the ground softened enough to hold tracks. Coda helped without being asked. The dog would stop suddenly, nose lifting, body going still. Then he would shift direction, guiding Nathan towards something unseen. Sometimes it was small game, or sometimes just a change in the air. Nathan followed, not blindly, but with trust. The first time they brought something back to the shelter, Nathan paused at the edge of the clearing. He looked down at the ground, then back into the trees, then at Coda. Not here, he said quietly. He moved farther out, choosing a different location to prepare the food, away from the shelter, away from the place he slept. No scent trails, no patterns, no invitations. Coda stayed alert the entire time, ears forward, eyes scanning the darkening forest. When they returned, the shelter remained untouched, unnoticed, just the way it needed to be. Nights grew quieter, not silent, but manageable. Nathan still woke sometimes, still felt the pull of something he couldn't control, but it didn't take him as far anymore. It didn't drag him under the way it had before. Coda always brought him back, a shift of weight, a low breath, a presence that didn't demand anything, just anchored him to what was real. And slowly, that became enough. One morning, Nathan woke before the light had fully reached the valley. He sat still, listening. The wind had changed, stronger now, colder. It carried a different scent. Snow. Not yet, but soon. Nathan stood, stepping out from beneath the rock. The sky above was pale, stretched thin across the peaks. The air had that quiet tension that came before a shift. He knew what it meant. Winter wasn't far off, and winter here didn't forgive mistakes. He turned back toward the shelter, looked at the wall, the fire pit, the small patch of ground he had begun to clear near the edge of the clearing. Not enough. Not yet. Work to do, more wood, more structure, better insulation. He moved immediately, no hesitation. The mountain had given him time, not much, but enough. Coda followed, matching his pace. They worked through the day without pause. Nathan reinforced the wall, packing dirt and moss between the stones to seal the gaps. He added a second layer of branches, thicker this time, weaving them tighter, closing off more of the opening. He gathered larger pieces of wood, dragging them back one by one, stacking them carefully along the inner edge of the shelter. Not just for fire, for survival. By late afternoon, his hands were raw. His shoulders burned. His breath came heavier. But he didn't stop. Because stopping meant thinking. And thinking still wasn't safe. The sun dipped low. The temperature dropped fast. Now Nathan lit the fire, watching the flames catch, then settle. Coda moved to his usual place just beyond the light. The forest shifted as night fell. Different sounds now. Lower, slower, but not empty. Never empty. Nathan sat back against the rock, pulling his coat tighter around him. For a long moment, he just watched the fire. Then he looked out toward the trees, the darkness beyond, and something in his chest tightened. Not fear, not exactly. Awareness. The kind that didn't come from imagination. The kind that came from knowing this place was working. The shelter, the fire, the routine. It was all holding. But that didn't mean it would last. The mountain didn't care how well you built something. It only cared how long you could keep it standing. Coda shifted slightly. A subtle movement. But enough. Yet Nathan's head turned. The dog was looking into the trees, not tense, but focused. Nathan followed his gaze. At first he saw nothing, just shadow, movement of branches in the wind. Then, something else. A shape. Gone as quickly as it appeared. Nathan didn't move. Didn't speak. He just watched. Waited. The forest returned to stillness. Coda remained where he was, eyes fixed, body steady. Seconds passed. Then longer. Finally, the dog relaxed. Just slightly. Enough, Nathan exhaled slowly. Not danger. Not yet. But not nothing either. He leaned back again, eyes still on the edge of the trees, and for the first time since he had begun to build something here, he understood. This place could keep him hidden. It could keep him alive. But it would never, not for a single moment, stop watching him back. The first snow didn't arrive with a storm. It came quietly, almost gently. Nathan noticed it at dawn, stepping out from beneath the rock as he always did, scanning the valley below. The world had changed overnight. Not dramatically, just enough. A thin layer of white rested across the ground, clinging to branches, softening edges, muting sound. Everything looked cleaner. Still. But Nathan didn't trust it. Snow didn't hide things. It revealed them. He stepped forward, boots pressing into the fresh surface, leaving clear, defined prints behind him. He looked down at them for a moment, then turned slowly, scanning the clearing. Nothing else. No other tracks. No disturbance. Just his and Coda's. The dog moved beside him, nose low, tracing the edge of the clearing with quiet precision. Nathan exhaled. Good. For now. Yet the temperature had dropped overnight. Not drastically, but enough that every breath left a faint cloud in the air. The wind carried a sharper bite, cutting through fabric more easily. Nathan adjusted his coat and looked up toward the ridgeline. Gray clouds had gathered there, heavy, waiting. He knew what that meant. This was just the beginning. The real storm was coming. He didn't waste time. That day, he worked harder than he had since arriving. More wood, more insulation. He reinforced the shelter again, packing snow along the outer wall, sealing gaps where cold air slipped through. He layered additional branches inside, building thickness between himself and the outside world. Coda stayed close, moving less now, conserving energy without losing awareness. The forest had changed too. Quieter. Not peaceful, but just withdrawn. By late afternoon, the wind shifted, stronger, colder, and then it came. The storm didn't build slowly. It arrived all at once. Wind tore through the trees, bending branches, sending loose snow spiraling through the air. The temperature dropped sharply, biting deeper with every passing minute. Nathan moved fast. He secured what he could, dragging the last of the wood inside the shelter, checking the structure, reinforcing weak points. The fire took longer to catch. The wood was colder now, resisting. But eventually, the flames held. Small, controlled, enough. Snow began to fall harder, not drifting now, driving. The world beyond the shelter disappeared quickly, swallowed by white and wind. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Sound shifted too, everything muffled, distorted, like the mountain itself was holding its breath. Nathan sat close to the fire, back against the rock, pulling his coat tighter. Coda lay beside him, body angled toward the opening, eyes fixed on the storm. Hours passed, or maybe it was less. Time didn't move the same way anymore. The cold pressed in from every direction. The fire fought back, but it wasn't enough. Not against this. Nathan's hands began to stiffen, his fingers slower, his breath shallower. He shifted closer to the fire, feeding it carefully, conserving wood, adjusting airflow. Everything became smaller, focused. Survival. Coda moved closer too. Not just beside him now, against him. Pressing his body into Nathan's side, sharing heat. Nathan didn't notice it at first. Not consciously, but his body did. It leaned into it, accepted it. But the storm intensified. Wind howled against the rock, forcing snow into every exposed space, testing every weakness in the structure Nathan had built. The shelter held, barely. The temperature dropped further. Nathan's movements slowed. His thoughts dulled. The edges of the world softened again, but not the same way as before. This wasn't memory. This was something else, something colder. He blinked. Once. Twice. The fire blurred. The sound of the wind stretched, warped into something distant. Nathan's head dipped slightly. Just for a second. That's all it took. Coda reacted instantly. The dog shifted position, pushing harder against Nathan, nudging him, forcing movement. Nathan didn't respond. Not fully. His breathing had changed. Slower. Shallower. Coda let out a low sound. Not a bark, not a growl. A warning. And he stood abruptly, moving in front of Nathan, then back again, circling, agitated for the first time. Then he made a decision. Coda moved toward the opening of the shelter, disappearing briefly into the storm. The wind swallowed him instantly. Nathan didn't see it, didn't feel it. The cold had begun to settle too deep. Seconds passed. Then longer. And then Coda returned. His fur dusted with snow, his movements fast, urgent. He began digging, right at the edge of the shelter. Not random. Targeted. He scraped away snow, pushing it aside, creating a shallow depression near the rock wall where the wind hit less directly. Then he turned back to Nathan. Pushed, harder this time, forcing him to shift. Nathan's body resisted, slow, heavy. But Coda didn't stop. He pressed again, and again. Until finally, Nathan moved, just enough. Coda guided him into the space he had cleared, positioning him closer to the rock, where the heat from the fire and the natural insulation of the stone could hold better. Then, Coda lay across him, full weight, chest to chest, fur against skin, heat, real, immediate. Nathan's breathing hitched, just slightly. The cold didn't disappear, but it slowed. The fire flickered, the storm raged. But in that small pocket of space, something held. Minutes passed, or hours. Time didn't matter anymore. Only the next breath, and the one after that. Nathan's eyes fluttered open, barely. His vision was blurred, unfocused, but he felt it. The weight, the warmth, the steady rhythm against his chest. Coda. Nathan's hand lifted, slow, shaking, and rested against the dog's side. The fur was damp, cold in places, but alive, strong. He exhaled, a weak sound, but enough. The world didn't snap back, not all at once, but it shifted, gradually. The cold loosened its grip, the fire regained its shape. The sound of the storm returned to something real. Nathan's breathing deepened, still slow but present. He stayed there, didn't move, didn't try. He let the moment hold, let the dog hold him. And slowly, the night passed. When the storm finally broke, it did so without warning. The wind stopped, the snow softened, the silence returned. Morning light filtered in, pale and thin, reflecting off the heavy blanket of snow that now covered everything. Nathan opened his eyes fully. The world was different, brighter, colder, but still there. He was still there. Coda was still pressed against him, unmoving, too still. Nathan's hand tightened slightly. Coda. His voice was rough, weak. The dog didn't respond immediately. For a brief moment, fear cut through everything else. Sharp, clean. Then, a shift. Small, but enough. Coda lifted his head slowly, eyes blinking against the light. Alive. Nathan closed his eyes again, just for a second. Relief didn't come in a rush. It came quietly. Heavy. He rested his forehead against the dog's side. Didn't speak. Didn't move. Just stayed. Because for the first time since the storm began, he understood something clearly. He hadn't survived that night. Not alone. And without the dog beside him. He wouldn't have survived it at all. The mountain didn't give them time to rest. It never did. By midday, the sun had risen just high enough to soften the surface of the snow, turning it from powder into something heavier, something that held shape. Nathan stepped carefully out from beneath the shelter, his body still stiff from the night before. Every movement reminded him. Cold. Weakness. Close. Too close. He paused at the edge of the clearing, scanning the ground. The snow told stories now. Every step, every shift, every presence. His tracks were there, clear and uneven, leading out and back from the shelter. Coda's prints circled wider, controlled, methodical, familiar, expected. Nathan followed them with his eyes, tracing the patterns without thinking. Routine. Then he stopped. There, near the outer edge of the clearing. Something else. A mark that didn't belong. Faint. Partially filled with wind-blown snow, but still visible. Nathan took a slow step forward. Then another. Coda moved instantly, positioning himself slightly ahead, body low, ears forward. Nathan crouched, studied the ground. A boot print, not his, larger, deeper at the heel, recent, not ours. Maybe a day, maybe less. Nathan's chest tightened. Not panic, focus, pure, sharp. He lifted his head slowly, scanning the tree line. The forest looked the same, still, silent, but it felt different, like something had shifted just out of sight. Koda's body stiffened. A low rumble formed in his chest, barely audible but unmistakable. Nathan didn't speak, didn't move. He followed the direction of the print. It led in, then stopped. No return, no second set. Nothing. As if whoever had been there had simply vanished. Nathan stood slowly. The cold air filled his lungs, but it didn't steady him. It sharpened him, and he turned back toward the shelter. Everything changed in that moment. The place that had felt hidden, secure, his, now felt exposed, observed, known. He moved quickly, no wasted motion. First, the fire. He extinguished it immediately, covering the embers with packed snow, smothering any trace of heat or smoke. Then the wood. He redistributed it, breaking the pattern, scattering the stack so it wouldn't read as stored supply. The wall. He checked every section, tightening, adjusting, reinforcing the camouflage where it looked too clean, too deliberate. Koda moved with him, no longer circling, now staying close, guarding. Nathan stopped at the edge of the clearing again, looking outward. The boot print was still there, a quiet warning. He turned his gaze uphill, then downhill, then back to the trees. Someone had been here, close enough to see, close enough to leave a mark. And if they had come once, they could come again. Nathan exhaled slowly, then made a decision. "We move," he said. Koda didn't hesitate. They left the shelter. Not permanently, but enough. Nathan moved through the forest at an angle, not following a straight line, not creating a pattern. He stepped carefully, placing each foot where the snow would collapse naturally, avoiding clean impressions when he could. Koda adjusted instantly, mirroring the movement, staying just ahead, reading the terrain, choosing paths that broke visibility. They moved for over an hour. Upward, then across, then back down slightly. Nathan didn't speak, didn't stop. Until finally, he found a vantage point, a narrow rise between two clusters of rock, which overlooking the area below. From there, he could see it, the shelter. Small, blended, almost invisible. Almost. Nathan crouched behind the rock, lowering his profile. Koda lay beside him, still, silent. They watched. Minutes passed, then longer. The world remained unchanged. No movement, no sound, just wind brushing lightly across the snow. Nathan's eyes scanned every inch, every shadow, every shift. And then, there, at the far edge of the trees, a figure, distant, moving slowly, deliberately. Nathan didn't react outwardly, but something inside him locked into place. The man wore dark clothing, blending into the tree line, but the way he moved, that gave him away. Not cautious, not careful, confident, like someone who knew how to move through the wilderness. He stepped into the clearing, paused, looked around, then moved closer, closer to the shelter. Koda's muscles tightened beneath his fur. Nathan's hand rested lightly against the dog's side, not holding, not restraining, just grounding. They watched. The man reached the edge of the structure. He didn't rush, didn't search blindly. He looked, studied, then stepped closer. He crouched near the wall, running a hand along the stone. testing, understanding. Nathan's jaw tightened. This wasn't random. This wasn't someone lost. This was someone who knew what he was looking at. The man stood again, looked toward the trees, toward the direction Nathan and Coda had come from. Then he smiled. Not wide, not obvious, but enough. Nathan saw it. And in that moment, everything changed again. This wasn't just exposure. This was threat. The man turned back toward the shelter, stepping closer now, reaching toward the stacked wood. Touching. Taking. Coda shifted, a low sound forming again. Nathan's hand pressed slightly firmer against him. Not yet. Not here. Not from this distance. They needed to know more. The man moved through the space, slow, deliberate, taking in every detail. Then he stopped, looked directly at the rock overhang, at the entrance, and for a brief moment, he stood perfectly still, listening, as if he expected something to move inside. Nathan's breath slowed, every sense sharpened. The man waited. Then, he stepped back, turned, and disappeared into the trees. Just like that. Gone. Nathan didn't move, didn't speak. He kept watching, waiting. Minutes passed, then longer. Nothing returned. The clearing was empty again, but it wasn't the same. Not anymore. Nathan exhaled slowly. The tension didn't leave. It settled deeper. He looked down at Coda. The dog's eyes were still fixed on the place where the man had vanished. Alert. Ready. Nathan nodded once, a silent understanding passing between them. This wasn't over. Not even close. He shifted slightly, adjusting his position behind the rock, then looked back down at the shelter, at the place he had built, the place that had almost kept him alive, and now might get him killed. The mountain hadn't changed. The forest hadn't changed. But something else had. Someone new. And from this moment forward, nothing they did would go unseen again. Nathan didn't return to the shelter right away. He stayed on the ridge, crouched behind stone and shadow, went watching the empty clearing long after the man had disappeared. Time stretched thin, pulled tight by the weight of what he had just seen. The mountain was quiet again. Too quiet. Coda remained beside him, unmoving, eyes locked on the tree line below. The dog didn't relax, didn't shift. He understood. Nathan exhaled slowly. "We don't go back the same way," he said under his breath. Coda flicked an ear. They moved only after the sun had begun to drop, shadows lengthening across the snow, blurring edges, softening distance. Nathan chose a different route down. Wider, indirect. He circled the clearing from above, using the terrain to stay hidden, stepping only where rock broke the snow or where wind had erased clear impressions. Coda stayed close now, not ranging, not exploring, guarding. By the time they reached the edge of the shelter, the light was nearly gone. Nathan stopped, listened. Nothing. No movement. No sound. He stepped forward slowly. The clearing looked the same, but it wasn't. He could feel it, like walking into a room where someone had just been standing. The fire pit was cold. The wood had been touched, shifted slightly, just enough to confirm what he already knew. Someone had been here. Close. Close enough to take. Close enough to wait. Nathan moved inside the shelter, scanning every inch. Nothing missing, nothing broken. But that didn't matter. The line had already been crossed. He turned back toward the entrance. Coda stood just outside, body angled toward the trees, alert. Nathan stepped out beside him. The air had grown colder. He could feel night settling in. Well, and with it, the risk. Then, a sound. Subtle. Behind him. Too close. Coda reacted first. The dog spun, body dropping low, a deep growl rising from his chest. Nathan turned instantly, and there, at the edge of the clearing, the man stood. Closer than before. Much closer. Dylan Mercer. He didn't look surprised. Didn't look like he had been hiding. He stood openly now, one hand resting near his belt, the other loose at his side. His eyes moved from Nathan to Coda, then back again. "Well," Dylan said, his voice calm, almost amused. "Guess you are real." Nathan didn't answer. His stance shifted slightly. Not aggressive, not passive, ready. Coda stepped forward, placing himself directly between Nathan and the stranger. The growl deepened, low, warning. Dylan's eyes flicked down to the dog. "Easy," he said, though there was no real concern in his voice. "Just here to talk." Nathan's voice came out quiet, controlled. "You've already done enough." Dylan tilted his head slightly. "Depends how you look at it." He took a slow step forward. Coda's reaction was immediate. A sharp bark. Then movement. Fast. Direct. The dog lunged. Not wild. Not reckless. Targeted. Dylan reacted quickly, stepping back, hand moving to intercept. There was a flash of motion. Something metallic catching the last of the light. A knife. The movement was brief. Too fast. Coda pulled back with a sharp sound, landing hard on the snow. Nathan's world narrowed instantly. Everything slowed. The distance between them disappeared. He moved forward without thinking, placing himself between the dog and the man. His voice cut through the air. "Stop." Dylan held his position, knife still in hand, eyes sharp now, no longer amused. For a moment, no one moved. The wind carried through the clearing. Cold, steady. Nathan's chest rose and fell slowly, controlled. Coda shifted behind him, regaining his footing, a low growl still present, but weaker now. Nathan didn't look back. Didn't need to. He could feel it. Something wasn't right. Dylan glanced down briefly, then back up. "Should keep him on a leash," he said. Nathan's eyes didn't leave his. "You shouldn't be here." Dylan gave a faint smile. "Funny, I was about to say the same thing." Silence settled between them. Heavy, measured. Dylan lowered the knife slightly, but didn't put it away. "Place like this," he continued, glancing around the shelter, "takes time to build, effort, planning." His gaze returned to Nathan. "Would be a shame if something happened to it." Nathan didn't respond, but something inside him shifted. Not fear. Recognition. This wasn't curiosity. This was interest. Possession. Dylan took another slow step back. "Don't worry," he said. "I'm not here to take anything." He paused, then added, "Yet." The word hung in the air, sharp, clear, final. Nathan's hands remained steady at his sides, his breathing even. But his mind was already moving, calculating, adjusting. Dylan turned slightly, glancing once more at the shelter, then back at Nathan. "You're not the only one who knows how to live out here," he said quietly. Then he stepped back into the trees and vanished, just like before. The clearing fell silent again, but the silence wasn't empty, as it was full of something else now, something that hadn't been there before. Threat. Nathan didn't move for several seconds. Then, slowly, he turned. Coda stood a few feet behind him. The dog's stance was uneven, his breathing heavier. Nathan's eyes dropped. There, along the side of Coda's shoulder, a dark line. Fresh. Nathan stepped closer immediately. Coda. His voice was lower now. Different. He crouched, careful, steady. The dog didn't resist, didn't pull away. He just watched, trusted. Nathan reached out, inspecting the wound. Not deep, but enough. Enough to matter. Enough to remind him. This wasn't a warning anymore. This was escalation. Nathan's jaw tightened. He rested his hand briefly against the dog's neck, a quiet acknowledgement. Then he stood, slowly, turning his gaze back toward the trees, went where Dylan had disappeared. The mountain hadn't changed. The shelter hadn't changed. But the rules, they had. And now, this place wasn't just about survival. It was about defense. And Nathan understood that better than anyone. He looked down at Coda. The dog met his gaze, still steady, still there. Nathan gave a small nod, then turned back toward the shelter, already thinking, already planning. Because the next time that man came back, it wouldn't be to talk. And this time, Nathan wouldn't be watching from a distance, but someone else was. Caleb Foster hadn't planned to come back. At least that's what he told himself as he saddled his horse before sunrise, the same way he had every morning for years. Routine made decisions easier. It gave shape to things that didn't have answers. But the truth sat heavier than routine. He hadn't slept. Not after what he saw the day before. A man living in a place no one should be living. A dog that didn't bark, didn't panic, just stood. And something else. Something harder to explain. The way the man had looked at him. Not with fear, not even with anger. But with something Caleb recognized from long ago. The kind of stillness that came from surviving things most people never had to face. Caleb adjusted the strap of his pack and started up the ridge. The air was colder today, thinner. Snow had settled overnight, covering old tracks, smoothing the land into something deceptively clean. But Caleb wasn't looking for tracks. Not exactly. He was looking for signs, subtle ones. The kind that didn't announce themselves. It took him over an hour to reach the overlook. But from there, the valley stretched out below, silent, untouched, vast. And then, there it was. The faintest trace of smoke, barely visible, rising along the rock face, controlled, just like before. Caleb stood still for a long moment, then exhaled. Still there, he muttered. He tied off his horse and continued on foot. This time he moved slower, more careful. Not because he expected danger, but because something told him this wasn't a situation that he could walk into the same way twice. The forest felt different now, not empty, occupied. Every step he took seemed louder, even though he knew it wasn't. The snow softened his movements, but it also amplified everything else. The silence, the tension, the awareness that he was entering someone else's space. He reached the edge of the clearing, stopped. The shelter was there, just like before. But now that he knew what he was looking at, he saw more. The wall, the structure, the way everything blended into the environment. This wasn't luck. This was skill, training. Caleb stepped forward slowly, and then he saw him. Nathan stood just outside the shelter, still, watching. The dog was there too, closer this time, positioned slightly ahead, between them, always between them. Caleb raised his hands slightly, not high, not exaggerated, just enough. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. His voice carried clearly in the cold air. Nathan didn't respond immediately. His eyes stayed fixed, measuring. Caleb could feel it. The assessment, distance, intent, everything. Finally, Nathan spoke. "You came back." Caleb nodded once. "Yeah." A pause. "Oh, I had to." Nathan's expression didn't change. "Why?" Caleb hesitated, not because he didn't have an answer, but because none of them felt right. "You're not supposed to be out here," he said finally. The words sounded weaker than he expected. Nathan's gaze didn't shift. "Neither are you." That landed. Caleb let out a slow breath. "Fair." Another pause. The wind moved lightly through the clearing, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and cold stone. Caleb glanced briefly at the shelter again, then back at Nathan. "You built this?" he asked. Nathan didn't answer, but he didn't need to. Caleb nodded slightly. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That tracks." His eyes moved to the dog, the way it stood, the way it watched, the way it didn't break focus. "You military?" Caleb asked. Nathan's jaw tightened, just slightly. Was." Caleb nodded again. "Thought so." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of things neither of them said. Caleb shifted his weight. "This area's restricted," he said. "Has been for years. Old claims, unstable ground. Technically, you're trespassing." Nathan didn't react, didn't argue, didn't defend. He just stood there, and that told Caleb more than any answer could have. "You planning to leave?" Caleb asked. A simple question, but it carried weight. Nathan's response came without hesitation. "No." Not aggressive, not defiant. Just certain. Caleb studied him, then looked at the shelter again, at the fire pit, at the careful placement of everything, at the way the smoke disappeared before it could be seen from below. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't desperation. This was choice. Caleb rubbed a hand across his jaw. "Look," he said, lowering his voice slightly. "If someone else finds you out here, someone who cares about the rules more than I do, you're not going to get this conversation." Nathan didn't respond, but his eyes shifted slightly. Listening. Caleb continued. "They'll pull you out. No questions. No options." A beat. "You understand that?" Nathan nodded once. "I do." Another silence. Longer this time. The kind that pressed in, forcing something to give. Caleb felt it building. The decision. The one he had known was coming the moment he saw that smoke. He looked at Nathan, at the dog, at the place they had built. And something inside him shifted. Not logic, not policy. Something else. "You hurt?" Caleb asked suddenly. Nathan blinked once, the question catching him off guard. "No." Caleb's eyes moved to the dog, Coda. The way he held himself, the slight imbalance, the tension under the fur. "Dog is," Caleb said. Nathan's gaze hardened slightly, protective. Caleb raised a hand again. "I'm not asking to take him. he said quickly. Just asking. A pause. Then carefully. I've got a kit. In my pack. Nathan didn't move. Didn't respond. Coda's eyes never left Caleb. The moment stretched. Tight. Uncertain. Then, Nathan stepped forward. Just one step. Enough. Caleb understood. Slowly, deliberately, he reached behind him, pulling the pack around, unzipping it without breaking eye contact. He moved carefully. No sudden motions, no assumptions. He pulled out a small medical kit, held it out. Not too close, not too far. Nathan stepped forward again. Took it. Their hands didn't touch. But the distance between them changed. Just slightly. Nathan knelt beside Coda, opening the kit, working in silence. Caleb watched. Not as an officer, not as someone enforcing rules, but as someone who understood what he was seeing. The care, the precision, the way Nathan moved, not rushed, not hesitant, experienced. Coda didn't flinch, didn't pull away. He trusted. Completely. Caleb exhaled slowly, then looked away, out toward the trees, giving them space. Time passed. The wind shifted again, cold, clean. Nathan finished closing the kit. He stood, held it out. Caleb shook his head. Keep it. Nathan hesitated, then nodded once. Thank you. The words were quiet, but they mattered. Caleb adjusted his pack again, then looked back at him. This doesn't change anything, he said. A beat. I still have to report something. Nathan's expression didn't change. I know. Another silence. Then Caleb added, but it doesn't have to be everything. That landed. Nathan held his gaze. Not grateful, not relieved. Just understanding. Caleb nodded once, then turned, started back toward the trees. He stopped after a few steps, didn't turn around. Smoke's too clean, he said. Someone like me notices that. A pause. Adjust it. Then he kept walking, disappearing into the forest the same way he had come. The clearing fell quiet again. Nathan stood there for a long moment, the weight of what had just happened settling slowly. Not danger, not safety. Something in between. He looked down at Coda. The dog's eyes met his, still steady, still there. Yet Nathan nodded once, then turned back toward the shelter. The mountain hadn't changed. The threat hadn't disappeared. But now, there was something new, a variable, a man with a badge, who hadn't acted like one. Caleb didn't slow down until the shelter was out of sight. Even then, he kept moving, down through the trees, across the ridge, back toward the trail he knew better than any map. But his mind, it didn't follow. It stayed behind. With the man, with the dog, with the silence that had settled between them like something unspoken but understood. The forest shifted around him, branches brushing against his coat, boots pressing into snow that had begun to harden under the midday sun. Routine. That's what he needed. Distance, space, clarity. But none of it came. By the time he reached his horse, the sun had climbed higher, casting long, pale light across the valley. The world looked the same, unchanged. But it wasn't. Caleb untied the reins and paused, resting a hand against the saddle. For a moment, he just stood there, listening, not to the forest, to himself. You report it, he said quietly. The words came out automatic, the way they always had. You find something out of place. You report it. You follow procedure. You let the system handle it. That was the job. That was the rule. Caleb swung into the saddle, started down the trail. But the words didn't settle. They didn't feel right. Because this wasn't what the system was built for. A man surviving in the woods, a dog that kept him alive, a place built not out of defiance, but out of necessity. Caleb exhaled sharply. Doesn't matter, he muttered. Rules are rules. But even as he said it, he knew. This wasn't about rules anymore. It was about consequences. He reached the ranger station just before noon, a small building tucked near the edge of the valley, surrounded by open ground and the quiet hum of nothing happening. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. Caleb stepped in, boots heavy against the wooden floor. "Morning," a voice called from the back. Tom Harlan, older, retired in everything but title. Caleb nodded once. "Morning." Tom glanced up from his desk. "You're out early?" "Could say the same." Tom shrugged. "Couldn't sleep." Caleb paused. Something about that felt too close. He moved past him, setting his pack down near the wall. Tom watched him for a moment. Then, "You find something?" Caleb didn't answer right away. He poured himself a cup of coffee. Black. Let it sit in his hands. Warm. Real. Tom leaned back in his chair slightly. "I know that look," he said. "That's not a nothing happened look." Caleb took a sip, then set the cup down. "Smoke," he said. Tom raised an eyebrow. "Up in the restricted zone." Tom's posture shifted slightly. "Illegal grow?" Caleb shook his head. "No." A pause. "Not that." Tom studied him. "What then?" Caleb hesitated. Just for a second. Then, "Someone living up there." The room went still. Tom blinked once. "You serious?" Caleb nodded. "Yeah." Tom leaned forward now. "Cabin?" "No." "Camp?" "No." Caleb exhaled slowly. "Built into the rock. Smart. Hidden. Controlled fire." Tom stared at him. "Who?" Caleb shook his head. "Don't know." A beat. Then, "Veteran. Or maybe." Tom's expression changed. Subtle, but real. "You talked to him?" Caleb nodded once. Tom leaned back again. "All right," he said slowly. "So we log it. Send it up. They'll bring a team in." The words landed exactly the way Caleb knew they would. Procedure. Response. Removal. He could already see it. The trucks. The men. The questions. The end of something that wasn't meant to be touched. Caleb looked down at the table, then back at Tom. "Or," he said quietly, "we don't." Tom frowned. "What?" Caleb held his gaze. "We log it as smoke. Possible natural burn. No follow-up needed." Tom didn't respond immediately. He just watched him. Then, "That's not how this works." "I know." "You don't know what that guy's doing up there." Caleb shook his head. "I do." Tom narrowed his eyes. You're sure about that?" Caleb didn't hesitate. "He's surviving." The word hung in the air, heavy, clear. Tom leaned forward again. "That's not our call, Caleb." Caleb's jaw tightened. "No," he said, "but it is my report." Silence. Longer this time. Tom studied him, really studied him, then sighed. "You get attached?" Caleb shook his head. "No." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure. Tom leaned back, rubbing a hand across his face. This ends one of two ways, he said. Either you do your job, he paused, then added, or you don't. Caleb didn't respond, because there wasn't a middle ground. Not here, not now. He thought about the shelter, the fire, the way the smoke moved along the rock, the way the dog had stood between them without hesitation, the way the man had said, "I'm not leaving." How Caleb exhaled slowly, then reached for the report log. The pen felt heavier than it should have. He flipped it open. Blank page. Waiting. Tom didn't move, didn't speak. He just watched. Caleb lowered the pen and wrote. Slow. Deliberate. Smoke sighted near Upper Ridge. Possible natural source. No further action required. The words settled onto the page. Simple. Clean. Wrong. Or maybe right. He closed the log, set the pen down. Tom didn't say anything. For a long moment, neither of them did. Then, Tom nodded once. Not approval, not agreement. Just acknowledgement. Caleb stood, picked up his pack. I'll head back out later, he said. Tom didn't stop him, didn't question it. Caleb stepped outside. The air hit him immediately. Cold, sharp, real. He looked out toward the mountains, toward the place no one else would go now, not unless something changed. And for the first time since he saw that smoke, the decision had been made. Clear, final. But decisions like that, they didn't end anything. They started something that couldn't be undone. Caleb adjusted the strap on his shoulder, then turned back toward the trail. Because now, he wasn't just a ranger. He was a man carrying a secret. And out in those mountains, there were 2 lives depending on it. The mountains didn't know about reports. They didn't care about paperwork or decisions made behind wooden desks. Out there, nothing changed. The wind still moved through the trees the same way. The snow still settled in silence. And the man beneath the rock still woke each morning with the same instinct. Check, listen, survive. Nathan stood at the edge of the clearing, eyes scanning the valley below. Days had passed since the encounter, since the man with the badge, since the man with the knife. 2 different kinds of danger. 2 different kinds of uncertainty. But both still present. Coda moved beside him, slower now, but steady. The wound along his shoulder had begun to close, but it hadn't healed fully. His movements were more measured, his strength slightly reduced. Nathan noticed everything, every shift, every breath, every hesitation. He adjusted for it, moved differently, stayed closer. The balance had changed, but not broken. Not yet. Nathan stepped back into the shelter. The fire was already prepared, set low, ready to be lit if needed. Supplies were spread differently now, less visible, more concealed. Nothing stayed in one place too long. Patterns were dangerous. Predictability, worse. He crouched near the wall, adjusting a section of branches, reinforcing the outer layer where snow had begun to melt and refreeze. Coda lay just inside the entrance, head low but eyes open. Watching, always watching. Nathan glanced at him. You rest, he said quietly. Coda didn't move, didn't close his eyes. Nathan gave a small nod. He expected that. Outside, the wind shifted again. Not violent, not sharp, just different. Nathan stood slowly, listened. The forest responded in small ways, branches moving, Snow falling from higher limbs. The distant call of something unseen. Normal, but not empty. Never empty. Later that afternoon, Nathan moved beyond the clearing, not far, just enough to check the perimeter, to confirm what he already knew, that nothing had been left behind. No new tracks, no fresh disturbances. The snow had begun to settle again, smoothing over old marks, erasing time. But not memory. Nathan crouched near the edge of the tree line, studying the ground. Then, he saw it. Not new, but still there. The faint outline of the boot print from days before, half covered, but present. A reminder. Someone had been here, and could be again. Nathan stood slowly, turned, and headed back. Inside the shelter, the light had begun to fade. Coda lifted his head as Nathan entered. Their eyes met. No words. None needed. Nathan moved to the fire pit, striking the flame carefully, letting it build just enough to push back the cold. He adjusted the wood, changed the angle, lowered the output. The smoke followed its path, sliding along the rock, disappearing, exactly as it should. Nathan watched it for a long moment, then made a small adjustment. Just enough, not too clean, not too controlled, just enough to make it look imperfect, natural, like it belonged to no one, like it could be ignored. That night, the forest stayed quiet. No movement, no intrusion, no sign of either man. But the absence didn't bring peace. It brought something else. Waiting. Nathan sat near the fire, Coda beside him, the dogs breathing slow and steady now, though still heavier than before. Nathan reached out, resting his hand lightly against Coda's neck. Warm, alive, present. He exhaled slowly, then leaned back against the rock, his eyes closed. Not fully, never fully, but enough. Oh, and for once, the darkness didn't take him. Not completely. Somewhere far below. A door closed. A light switched off. A report sat in a logbook, unquestioned, unchallenged, for now. At the ranger station, Caleb sat alone. The building was quiet. The kind of quiet that pressed in when there was nothing left to distract from your own thoughts. He stared at the logbook, at the line he had written. Simple, clean, incomplete. His hand rested near it, not touching. Just there. Tom had gone home hours ago, said nothing more, asked nothing more. But Caleb could feel it, the weight of the choice, not heavy in the way he expected, not immediate, but present, persistent. He leaned back in his chair, looked out the window. The mountains stood in the distance, silent, unchanged, hiding everything, hiding. Caleb exhaled slowly. They're still out there, he said quietly. No one answered. He didn't expect anyone to. He reached into his pack, pulled out something small, a wrapped bundle, basic supplies, medical, food. He set it on the table, looked at it for a long moment, then nodded once. Decision. Not new, just continued. Because not reporting them was one thing, but leaving them completely alone was another. And Caleb knew that wasn't what he had chosen. Not really. Back on the mountain, Nathan stirred slightly. Not from sound, not from fear, from something else. A shift. Subtle. Different. Coda's head lifted, ears forward, eyes locked toward the edge of the clearing. Nathan's eyes opened, slow, controlled. The fire flickered, the wind moved, and somewhere beyond the trees, something existed, but not moving, not approaching, just there. Nathan didn't reach for anything, didn't stand. He just watched, waited. Coda didn't growl, didn't bark. He just stayed alert. The moment stretched. Then it passed. The forest returned to stillness. Whatever had been there was gone, or had never fully been. Nathan exhaled slowly, but the feeling remained. Because now, he understood something clearly. He wasn't alone, not just because of the man who had threatened him, not just because of the man who had helped him, but because this place, this mountain, was beginning to remember him. And once something was remembered, it was never truly hidden again. Nathan looked down at Coda. The dog met his gaze, still steady, still there. Nathan gave a small nod, then leaned back again, the fire low, the night deep, and the silence holding. But beneath it, something had changed. The danger hadn't arrived. Not yet. But it was closer. And this time, when it did, there would be no warning at all. But it didn't come the way Nathan expected. Not fast. Not loud. Not like the past that used to crash into him without mercy. It came slowly. Like winter. Like time. Like something that didn't need to chase anymore. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. The mountains shifted through their quiet cycles, snow melting into streams, wind softening, trees breathing again. Nathan adapted with them. Always had. But something was different now. He wasn't just surviving. He was staying. The shelter beneath the rock had grown stronger over time, reinforced, refined, not larger, but smarter. Every movement had purpose. Every change had reason. Chum and Coda. Coda was still there. Older now, slower, but still watching. Still choosing to stand, even when it cost him more than it used to. Nathan noticed the small things first. The longer pauses before Coda stood. The way he settled more carefully. The way his eyes stayed sharp, even when his body didn't follow as easily. Nathan didn't say anything about it. He didn't need to. Some truths didn't require words. They lived in the space between them. One afternoon, as the sun stretched low across the ridge, Nathan sat outside the shelter. No fire, no tools in hand, just stillness. Coda lay beside him, close, not guarding, just there. Nathan looked out over the valley, the same view, the same silence. But it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full. Not with danger, not with memory, but with something he hadn't known how to name for a long time. Peace. Not perfect. Not permanent. But real. For the first time since the war, he wasn't waiting for something to break it. Behind him, the shelter remained quiet. Hidden. Untouched. No new tracks had crossed the clearing in weeks. No signs of return. No hunters. No strangers. Only the mountain. Only time. And far below, a man with a badge who had chosen not to use it. Caleb had kept his distance, mostly, but not completely. Every so often, days apart, sometimes longer, something would appear at the edge of the forest, never close enough to be obvious, never placed where it could be traced directly. A small bundle. Food. medicine. Supplies left in silence. Nathan had noticed. Of course he had, but he never followed, never searched, and he accepted it the same way the mountains accepted snow, without question, without acknowledgement. Some things didn't need to be spoken to exist. Back at the station, Caleb never mentioned it, not to Tom, not to anyone. The log remained unchanged, the report buried under routine entries and forgotten notes. But the choice, the one he had made, stayed with him, not as a burden, not as regret, but as something quieter, something steadier. He had seen many things in those mountains. People lost, people found, people who didn't belong. But this was different, because for once, he hadn't forced something back into a place it didn't survive in. He had left it where it could, and that mattered. Back on the ridge, the wind moved gently through the trees. Nathan shifted slightly, whilst resting his arms against his knees. Coda adjusted beside him, closer. Their shoulders touched. No tension, no alertness, just presence. Nathan glanced down at him. "You did good," he said quietly. Coda didn't react. Didn't need to. He already knew. The sun dipped lower. Light softened. The valley stretched out in quiet gold. Nathan leaned back slightly, closed his eyes. Not halfway, not cautiously, fully. And for the first time, there were no sounds chasing him, no echoes, no gunfire, no shadows pulling him back. Just the wind, just the mountain, just the steady rhythm of something that had finally stopped running. Beside him, Coda exhaled slowly, a long, quiet breath. Nathan didn't move, didn't open his eyes, but he felt it. The change. Not sudden, not sharp, just gentle. He reached down, but rested his hand against Coda's side. Still warm, still there, still enough. The light faded. The cold began to return. But it didn't matter, not the way it used to, because the fear that once filled the silence was gone. And in its place, there was something stronger, something earned, something that couldn't be taken. The mountain didn't change. The world beyond it didn't either. But here, in this hidden place beneath stone and sky, a man who had been lost wasn't anymore. And the dog who had never left him didn't need to protect him now, only to stay. And that was enough. If this story stayed with you, even just a little, I want you to do something simple. Type 1 in the comments if you believe loyalty like Coda's still exists. Type 0 if you think the world has forgotten it. No long message needed, just one number. And if you've ever felt lost, or like you didn't belong anywhere anymore, tell me where you're watching from. Because out there, somewhere, there are more stories like this. Quiet ones, real ones, the kind that don't always get told. So if you want to keep finding them, make sure you're subscribed. There's another story waiting for you, and the next one might stay with you even longer.